What's up, guys? This is Sammy33 coming back with another video. This is an interesting one. So, Strikeout is the one that requested and redeemed the salt points for this. And the topic is exactly what it is, building a match. So, this one, I am not speaking as a fan, I am speaking as a wrestler with my experience. So, building a match. Let's start with the basics. It's a pretty interesting topic. I'm going to probably be all over the board no matter what I have my notes on, but mostly I'm speaking from experience. So, let's go. Number one. Oops, I guess I need to turn that light on, so give me one sec. The first thing that's important is knowing what type of chemistry you guys have in the ring. So usually, what typically happens, to build a match, a couple things. Number one, who's supposed to win? And once you know who wins, you build towards the finish. So actually, when doing a match, I find it easier to build from the back to the front because we know who's going to win. So we need to know how that win is going to happen. Is it going to be via a finisher? Is it going to be via interference, shenanigans, something happening outside the ring, someone know to run in, a distraction, whatever. So you need to know how the match ends. For the most part, that doesn't change. The only time, in my experience, when it has changed is if someone has been injured and the match has to end quicker because of the injury. So you abort and basically you trying to like, okay, we need to end this like the first 30 seconds. I can tell you the first time I separated my shoulder in ring, I was supposed to be hit with a finisher, and it was a power bomb. And I was able to kick out the first time, but the first time is what separated my shoulder with the impact. And we're supposed to keep going about like another 5 minutes after, and then he was going to hit it again. But because I got hurt, we ended up cutting it to two, and he ended up having to go a different way. Like I believe it was a roll up or something, basically something that wouldn't put pressure on my shoulder because it's clearly in a lot of pain and it was very visible. So we had to make the adjustment on the fly. First things first, you figure out who's winning and how is it going to end. The finish is super important. If anything in a match, everything else can go wrong. The finish can't, because the finish always has a purpose. Someone's winning, someone's losing. You need to make sure the winner gets um, the proper impact from the match as far as the crowd and the emphasis. If it's a title match, and the belt's changing hands, you don't want the finish to go bad because then it kind of devalues that win. The same on the flip side, if it's a non-title match and it's a good match, you don't want it to have a sloppy ending because then it kind of negates the momentum for both wrestlers if they're both going on. Like if it's the end of a feud and they're both going separate, you also don't want bad, a bad finish to kind of get that loss in the shuffle. So you build from the back to the front. How are we going to finish the match? How do we get into the finish? What is going to happen in the middle parts of the match? Who's going to dominate most of the match? We have what we like to call A, B, C match. An A match is a squash, which means one person dominates the entire time, pretty much from beginning to end. You may call for a move here and there, but for the most part, the winner dominates from start to finish. You have the B match where it's the typical, the face is getting beat up for most of the match. You have the comeback at the end that leads into the finish. And even if the face is losing the match, still the heel tends to dominate most of the match. And then you have a C match, which is both wrestlers have their moments where they're dominating. It's like a 50-50 match, and then you go into the finish. So those are typically the three kind of matches we work with. I know there are other models out there too, but that's typically how we work. So what type of finish? How do we get into the finish? And that middle part is where I refer to A, B, and C. What type of matches is it? Back and forth? Is I'm a face, so am I going to be getting beat up the whole match and then make the comeback going into the finish? Or is it A, where the winner, the guy that's going to win, is just going to squash the other guy the whole match? So you get very little offense. It makes that's built to make that winner look super strong. C benefits both because it's back and forth, so you're both able to show your offense, and usually you have those at the end of feuds because it builds both up, and then they go separately into different things, whatever those are. And then B, with it being, the face getting dominated the whole match and then coming back at the end, and then whatever the finish is, it's just the typical face heel interaction. Those get mixed in. You see those at the end of feuds too. It just happens. It just depends on what kind of match you're trying to do. And then you have the beginning. The beginning is really important too. The middle, you have those different models that we work with, and then you have the beginning. So how do you get into the match? Is it a stare down? Is it a tie up? Is it a lot of reversals, like to make it look like you're prepared as far as studying your opponent? Is it just like full on, just brawling right away, going outside the ring, whatever? Like, it's how you set the tone for the way the rest of the match is going to be. That is very important too. I'd argue it's probably the finish is most important, and I'd probably say that is the next, because you want to kind of set the tone and get the crowd set up for what you want to do later in the match. There's lots of ways to go about that. It's important that you are really cognizant of what's going on with the crowd in that, and I'm going to come back to that a little bit later. What I want to focus on right now is the flow of the match. So there's different ways that this goes. If, for example, I've worked with a guy, Derek, don't use his last name, so I don't want to, I don't have his permission. I don't want to go down that road, but Derek and I have worked really well together in the past. We've had good chemistry. So we are to a point where when we talk about building a match, okay, it's going to be a C match. He's going to win or I'm going to win. How do we get the finish? So we'll talk about the finish. But we can work off each other really well in the ring. So we don't necessarily have to plan out step by step. This is how we start the match. We're going to tie up. You're going to win the tie up. You're going to put me in a headlock. I'm going to push you into the ropes. You're going to, give me a shoulder block. And then you're going to pick me up, swim me into the ropes. I duck, come up with a clothesline or something like that. And then you kick me. And then it actually goes into you kind of dominating the match. You're going to kick me. You're going to suplex me. You're going to go for a pin early. I kick out at 1. And then you put me in a headlock. Stuff like that, or a sleeper hold. Stuff like that, you can do. Depends on who you're working with. Now, me and him, we interact well with each other. We know as far as everyone has kind of their trademark moves. So I talk about myself, my finisher is a final solution. So it's a backflip off the top rope into a DDT. I have the reverse rock bottom, the resurrection, right? It's grab you, boom, just fall back. Think of Canyon with the flatliner. And a submission move in case it's someone that's bigger than me and it's a little bit harder maybe later on in the match for me to do what I need to do to hit, a potential move. And just it adds a different element because it gives me, adds to the technical stuff I do in the ring. But I have trademark moves that I like to do. I like to do the Stinger Splash. Sting's my favorite wrestler, so paying homage to him. I like to do the Triple Germans. I'm a big Kurt Angle fan. So I always try to find ways to get those moves. But what I like to do is find unique ways to getting to them, so it's not the same old, same old. Because if you watch a guy like John Cena, we would joke about calling it the 5 moves of doom. His finisher, you can't see me, 5-knuckle shuffle. The setup for the 5-knuckle shuffle, things like that. Those moves are going to be hit during the match. It's how you set them up. Now, some guys, they're not very creative with it on their own. Like, say, Cena, some of his matches may appear kind of dry because it's coming. You're just waiting for it to come. And it comes the same way every time. What makes it unique and what makes it fun to work with as far as being creative, and if you look at it as an art form, is how can I hit these triple Germans? But how can I know I'm going to hit them? And everyone else knows I'm going to hit them too. Do I actually finish the third, or do I let him, like we talk about, can you find a way to reverse it into a pinfall and then I kick out so it breaks it up? you're not expecting that. Or instead of waiting for you to get up and, doing some type of, taunt or whatever, for lack of a better word, to signal that I'm going to do it and didn't do it, can I find another way of getting into it? Maybe you jump off the top rope, I duck under and grab you and turn and start the suplex. You're not expecting that. Or do I reverse, like maybe you try to German me and, it ends up to me, essentially doing a backflip and then running up and grabbing you and doing it. Like you try to make it unique. So though your match flow may be similar because you're doing the same move set, you try to get into those special moves, the trademark moves, different. Thus, it helps keep your matches a little bit fresh. Something else that's playing out too. I really should have mentioned that earlier when going over the A, B's, and C because it's important, just like your finisher. You you want to make sure your finisher is always perfect. You don't want to botch a finisher. You don't want to botch your trademark moves too. But the more unique ways you can find of hitting them, the better. That's why moves like the RKO, that's why Orton's matches, why some say like, they're kind of the same, they're built the same. Doesn't matter. He finds a way to hit that backbreaker. It's not always the same. That, you know, hangman's DDT, whether it's off the ropes, whether it's off the barricade, and the RKO, because the RKO is such a unique move that can be hit from so many different ways, just like, Diamond Cutter DDP. It's exciting because you don't know how it's going to come. You know it's likely going to happen, you just don't know how, and you don't know when. Oh, it's nice, but in terms of communication, the most important thing in the ring. Do I need to verbally talk to you? Okay. Do we need to get in a headlock or a sleeper hold and you're talking? You try to shield it from the crowd as much as possible. So it may be I'm being stuck in a headlock and I say, something when I have my head down, no one can see my mouth. Your arms kind of covering and loosen it a little so I can talk. And then we're talking about, okay, I need you to do this next. Like I'm basically telling you what to do as if I was a more experienced guy. Or some type of signal like a slap, twice on the arm for I need a breather, double clothesline, we're both down, give you a chance to catch your breath. Knock me over the top rope, start the 8 count or 10 count or 8 count, whatever, so that you get a chance to catch your breath. Little things like that. Being able to communicate without, because you don't want the audience to see, though they know it's fake, you don't want to let them know. Like, don't want to just throw it right in their face, right? So, being able to communicate those things without the other person knowing. So, when you wrestle against someone a lot, that chemistry gets developed fast. No matter how great a wrestler is, like I look at guys like, say, Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart, they're both great wrestlers, but even when you put them together, it doesn't always mesh because how the matches are built in communication, things can go wrong. Some styles just don't mesh well together. Some guys aren't able to adapt as much. Some people have to lead the way because they have the psychology. Some people aren't able to follow. Um, some guys need to go a different route, which is literally planning from A all the way through Z. Every step along the way, A, B, C, D, E, F, all the way through T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. So this is every move in every situation we're going to have in this match. Memorize it like you would memorize a script for a play. Go in the ring and let it all go out. If something gets missed, you try to adjust the best you can on the fly, but you try to pretty much stick to that script. You have I guess you can call it the fake it till you make it, which is we're not going to come in with anything but the ending. And we're just going to go in there and we're just going to pretty much take our paintbrushes in with us and just draw out everything as it's happening. There is the other thing that happens too, the third one, which can be pretty common when you have guys that maybe have not worked together, or you have two guys that are really young that don't have the experience of necessarily calling a match. Calling a match would be, I'm a vet and say a strikeout is a newer guy. So I'm basically talking him through the match as we go. Like, okay, I need you to put me in a headlock. swing me in the corner, clothesline me in the corner, dump me over the top rope, DDT me here. I'm gonna clothesline you after the, I'm gonna clothesline you here, and then I'm gonna do this after, stuff like that. Like literally talking you through the match, like it's a coach. Like you just listen, and I lead the way. Versus, guys like me and Derek, when we're in the ring with each other, we'll talk to each other, we'll communicate. We have our signals and just like kind of talk during those certain moments so we can communicate what we want to do next. And then the referee having a headpiece, hey, this is the match is being called either by the ref specifically, like talking to the wrestlers, like, hey, I'm checking on the count. No, this is what you're supposed to do next. Holding up the arm to see if the guy's tapping out, but then leaning down and saying, okay, this is what happens next. Or someone in the back talking to the ref, calling the match essentially for them, and the ref relaying the information. So you have a couple of different ways of doing it. But to me, if we're going to sum it all up, most important part, the ending must be the best part of the match. Period. Point blank. It has a purpose. Every match should have a purpose, and the ending should be basically defining what that purpose is. The next important part is the beginning. How do you get into the match? How do you set the tone? How do you get the crowd involved in caring about what's going on in the ring, the story you're trying to tell? 3, what type of match is it? Is it a squash? Is it a back and forth? Or is it a classic face heel match where the heel dominates most of the match? And then last thing, communication. Are you communicating to each other in the ring? Literally writing your script as you go? Are you coming in with the script fully written and just adhering to the script? Or is it someone you've never worked with? Or is it someone that you're just newer to the business, so you don't have the experience of going with either A or B, and say, hey, we're just listening. Both of us are listening to the ref, to whoever is calling the match. It doesn't necessarily have to be the ref. It could, or the someone in the back. As far as like an upper, it could be creative. And this is how how we're gonna play out this match, and it's literally like talking them through the match. I will mention one last thing, so that kind of sums up how you would build a match and like the process that goes into it. The other thing that can impact it too is creative, and I'll just touch on this. So for us with creative, we have a group of people, which creative control. They're in charge of feud, storylines, all that stuff. And in some cases, it is a big group. In some cases, a small group. In some cases, like for the WWE, it's a collective group, but then you have individuals that are assigned to feuds. And then they still work with the staff as far as having promos written. But for us, it's individual person is in charge of a feud. You help them with building the match. You help them with the promos. But since we're talking about the match, we're just going to stick to the match. You help them build the match and figure out what works best for them. If maybe one is has the ability to call a match, you let them run with it, but you're still in the back. You can communicate through the ref. If you see the crowd's not interacting like you want them to, if the crowd's not as involved, go through the ref to maybe change some things to get done what you want done. Same thing with even with guys that call the match, or if there's a change to the match, if there's a saying like, hey, we're going to change who the winner is, being able to communicate that to the wrestlers in the ring, and then making sure that if the proper finish happens. But all be said, the finish almost always is done ahead of time. If something is changing on the fly, it feels like because it looks sloppy. But always, 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 always the finisher, the most important part of the match. No matter what type of match you watch, I almost guarantee it. If the first 2/3 are amazing and the finish is bad, it affects what you think of the match. If the rest of the match is awful, but it has a great finish, it affects what you think of the match. The finish is by far the most important part. Thanks for watching, guys. I wish it would have been shorter, but I gotta say, I love talking about wrestling. I really do. we'll see what we have coming next week. Thanks for taking a listen, and I'll catch you guys later. Have a good weekend.